The great hall of Veltar Prime stretched out like a metal ocean under the purple sky. 47 different species sat in their floating chairs, each one representing a star nation that had ruled space for thousands of years. The air smelled of ozone and strange perfumes from a dozen different worlds. Elder Crixthon stood at the center of it all. His 6 eyes moved slowly across the assembled crowd, each eye older than most civilizations. His skin was like ancient tree bark, marked with the scars of 10,000 years of watching the galaxy turn. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ages. "I have seen empires rise from nothing," he said. His words echoed through the translation devices that every species wore. "I have watched mighty civilizations fall to dust. Today I must warn you about a new species that has just learned to travel between the stars." A ripple of bored interest passed through the assembly. New species were discovered every few decades. Most burned out quickly or stayed on their home, worlds too afraid to venture far into the dangerous galaxy. "They call themselves humans," Crixthon continued. "They come from a small blue world in the outer rim. By all measures, they should not concern us. They have barely left their own solar system. They know nothing of our ways or our power." Ambassador Velcran of the Corvani hegemony let out a sound that might have been laughter. His golden scales shimmered as he spoke. "Elder, with respect, why do you waste our time with talk of primitives? We have real problems to discuss. The trade routes through Sector 7 need protection. The Thekran Empire continues to expand their borders." General Thekval of the mentioned empire stood up, his massive frame covered in ceremonial armor. "The Corvani speak of expansion while they hoard the best mining worlds for themselves. If you want to discuss real threats, look at species that actually matter." Elder Crixthon raised one of his ancient hands for silence. "You misunderstand. I do not warn you because humans are powerful today. I warn you because they will become more powerful than any of us can imagine." This caused real laughter from several delegates. The representative from the Zephyr Collective, a species that had mastered gravity itself, clicked her mandibles in amusement. "Elder, surely you jest. We have observed this species. They still use chemical rockets for most of their space travel. They fight wars with metal bullets. How could such beings threaten civilizations that have conquered time and space?" In the observer section, behind a wall of clear metal, Jiwan sat quietly and listened. She was the first human to ever attend a Galactic Council meeting, though, only as a witness. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the blue uniform of Earth's new stellar diplomatic corps. The translation device in her ear turned the alien languages into Korean, her native tongue. She tried not to show how overwhelmed she felt. 3 months ago, she had been a college student studying international relations in Seoul. Then the first alien contact ship had arrived at Earth, and everything changed. Now she sat in a room with beings that could destroy her entire planet. With a thought, Elder Crixthon continued speaking, ignoring the laughter around him. "You think in terms of technology and military might. This is why you do not understand. Humans do not succeed because they are strong. They succeed because they never stop trying." "What does that mean?" asked the Thekran general, his voice filled with military precision. "It means they treat every failure as a lesson, every defeat as practice, every obstacle as a puzzle to solve." The elder's 6 eyes seemed to focus on something far away. "I have watched species encounter their first great challenge and crumble. I have seen empires give up when faced with problems they could not solve immediately. Humans do not give up, they adapt." Ambassador Velcran waved a dismissive hand. "All species adapt, Elder. It is how evolution works." "No," Crixthon said, firmly. "Most species adapt to their environment. Humans adapt their environment to themselves. When their world became too small, they did not accept this limit. They built ships to reach other worlds. When those ships were too slow, they invented faster ones. When faster was not enough, they learned to bend space itself." The Zephyr representative spoke up again. "Elder, you describe the path of any spacefaring civilization. We all did these things. Did you do them in 50 years? The question hung in the air like a physical thing. Jiwan felt her heart skip a beat. 50 years? Humans had only achieved faster than light travel 6 months ago. The elder was talking about their future as if it was already history. Impossible, muttered someone from the back of the assembly. Elder Crixthon's ancient voice grew stronger. The humans achieved nuclear power in 1945 of their calendar. They reached their moon in 1969. They built a space station by 1998. They created their first faster-than-light drive in 2157, from the discovery of atomic energy to traveling between stars. 57 years. The hall fell silent. Jiwan did quick math in her head. Most of the species here had taken hundreds or thousands of years to make similar progress. The Corvani had needed 800 years between nuclear power and star travel. The Thekran Empire had taken over 1,000. You're saying they're fast learners, General Thekval said slowly. This does not make them a threat to established powers. I am saying they do not accept limitations, Crixthon replied. When a human encounters something they cannot do, they do not think this is impossible. They think I have not figured out how to do this yet. He gestured toward the great windows that showed the purple sky of Veltar Prime. Your empire, General, spans 50 star systems. It took you 3,000 years to build. The Corvani hegemony controls trade routes that required 2 millennia to establish. The Zephyr Collective spent 4,000 years mastering their gravity technology. The Hande Elder's 6 eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. Humans will accomplish more in their next century than most of our civilizations have achieved in their entire histories. And they will not stop there. Ambassador Velkran stood up, his golden scales bright with irritation. Even if this wild prediction is true, why should we care? The galaxy is vast. There is room for everyone. Because humans do not think in terms of enough, Crixthon said quietly. They think in terms of more, not from greed, but from curiosity. They will not be content to rule 50 worlds or 100. They will want to see what lies beyond the next star, and the next, and the next. The Thekran general laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Let them explore. When they encounter the established powers of this galaxy, they will learn their place quickly enough. Elder Crixthon looked directly at the general with all 6 eyes. And what will you do when they encounter your empire and decide they can improve it? The question sent a chill through the assembly. Jiwan felt it too, though she wasn't sure why. There was something in the elder's tone that suggested this wasn't a hypothetical question. Improve it? General Thekval's voice carried a dangerous edge. No primitive species improves the Thekran Empire. Humans do not see primitives and advanced civilizations, Crixthon explained patiently. They see problems and solutions. If they encounter a government that rules through fear, they will wonder if it might work better through cooperation. If they find a species that has given up exploring, they will wonder what it might accomplish with renewed purpose. The elder turned to address the entire assembly. I have seen this pattern before, though never so clearly. There have been species that shared some of these traits. The Veltari called them tide species, civilizations that do not simply exist in the galaxy but change it by their very presence. What happened to these other tide species? Asked the Zephyr representative. They burned out, Crixthon admitted. They expanded too fast, spread too thin, collapsed under their own growth. But humans... He paused, searching for the right words. Humans have something the others lacked. They do not seek to conquer or rule. They seek to include. Every species they encounter, they will ask the same question. How can we do this together? Ambassador Velkran made a sound of disgust. Cooperation is for the weak. The strong take what they need. The strong take, Crixthon agreed. But humans build. They will build alliances, technologies, and civilizations that we cannot imagine. And they will offer membership to anyone who wishes to join them. The assembly erupted in arguments and debates. Some delegates called the elders' predictions impossible. Others worried about trade implications. A few quietly asked their aides to prepare reports on human capabilities. Through it all, Jiwan sat and listened, trying to process what she was hearing. Was this really how aliens saw her species? As some kind of unstoppable force of change? She thought about her own people struggling with poverty and war and environmental problems. They didn't feel unstoppable. Elder Crixthon raised his hand for silence one final time. You may ignore my warning if you choose. History will prove me right or wrong. But remember this day when human ships appear in your space. Remember that I told you. Nothing can stand against them because they do not ask others to stand against them. They ask others to stand with them. The elder gathered his robes and walked slowly from the hall, leaving behind an assembly buzzing, with confusion and concern. Jiwan watched him go, wondering if she should feel proud or terrified. 3 years had passed since Elder Crixthon's warning, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice of the small blue world and its people. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon, watching the red sun of the Kepler 442 system grow larger on the main screen. His crew of 30 humans had been traveling for 6 months to reach this distant star, following rumors of a habitable world that other species had declared impossible to colonize. Captain, called out Navigation Officer Sora from her station. We're receiving a transmission from the Corvani monitoring station. They're warning us to stay away from the 4th planet. Hyunwoo smiled. In the 3 years since first contact, humanity had learned that warnings from established galactic powers usually meant, we don't want competition. The Corvani had claimed dozens of star systems, but rarely did anything with them except post-warning beacons. Send a polite response, Hyunwoo said. Tell them we're just exploring. We're not planning to interfere with any Corvani operations. Sir? Science Officer Doyen looked up from his instruments. There are no Corvani operations in this system, just the monitoring station, and according to my scans, the 4th planet is interesting. Hyunwoo walked over to Doyen's station. The young engineer had volunteered for deep space exploration after completing his studies in environmental systems. He had a talent for seeing possibilities where others saw only problems. Define interesting, Hyunwoo said. Doyen pulled up a holographic display of the planet. It was slightly larger than Earth, with a thick atmosphere that glowed orange in the sunlight. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen and carbon dioxide, with trace amounts of sulfur compounds. The surface temperature averages 60 degrees Celsius. The air pressure is twice what we're used to. Sounds terrible, commented Communications Officer Minji from across the bridge. No wonder the Corvani aren't interested. That's just it, Doyen said, his excitement growing. It's not terrible, it's just different. The planet has vast underground water reserves. The soil composition is actually quite good for certain types of plants. And the atmospheric pressure means we could build pressurized domes with much thinner walls than usual. Hyunwoo studied the display. Most species would look at this world and see a hostile environment that required massive terraforming efforts, but humans had learned to adapt to difficult conditions throughout their history. What would it take to make this place livable? For other species? Probably a century of atmospheric processing and temperature reduction, Doyen said. For humans? Maybe 6 months to set up a self-sustaining colony. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Hyunwoo made his decision. Take us into orbit. Let's get a closer look. 4 days later, Doyen was standing on the surface of Kepler 442c in a modified environmental suit, taking soil samples and atmospheric readings. The sky above him was a brilliant orange, and the horizon shimmered with heat waves. To most beings, in the galaxy this would seem like hell. To Doyen it looked like home with a little work. The underground water system is even better than we thought, he reported to the ship through his comm unit. We could tap into it with basic drilling equipment. And I've found mineral deposits that would be perfect for construction materials. Captain Hyunwoo's voice crackled through the speaker. What about the heat and atmospheric pressure? The heat is actually useful, Doyen explained, kneeling to examine a strange crystalline formation in the red soil. We could use it for power, generation, and the high pressure means our dome habitats would be incredibly stable. This place could support a much larger population than a normal colony world. While Doyen worked on the surface, Communications Officer Minji was busy in orbit, establishing humanity's first interstellar trade network. She had made contact with 17 different species in the past month, learning about their needs, their products, and their trade routes. "Captain," she called out as Hyunwoo entered the communications center, "I've got 3 species interested in human manufacturing. Apparently, our approach to tool-making is unique." "How so?" Minji pulled up a series of star charts marked with trade routes. "Most galactic species specialize. The Veltari make precision instruments but nothing else. The Koravani focus on raw materials. The Zephyr Collective does gravity manipulation but won't share the technology." She highlighted several connection points between existing trade routes. "Humans seem to be generalists. We can make a little bit of everything, and we're willing to trade knowledge as well as goods. That's apparently unusual." Hyunwoo studied the charts. "They're interested in trading with us because we're flexible?" "More than that," Minji said. "I've been talking to a Veltari trader named Sektan. He says most species trade to get what they need. Humans trade to get what they need and to build relationships. He's never encountered a species that sends personal messages along with their trade goods." "Personal messages?" Minji smiled. "I've been including photos of Earth, messages from human families, music files, art, things that show who we are, not just what we make. The other species find it fascinating. They're not used to traders who seem genuinely interested in friendship." Meanwhile, in the Tekran Empire, Commander Tekval was filing a report that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. His monitoring station near the human colony of New Sol had been observing human expansion for 2 years, and what he had seen made him understand Elder Crixthon's warning. "The humans do not build colonies," he dictated to his recording device. "They build, I lack the proper term. Each human settlement serves multiple purposes simultaneously. New Sol appears to be a mining operation, a research facility, a military base, and a civilian city all at the same time." He paused, trying to find the right words to explain what he had observed. "Most species establish colonies for a single purpose. Military outposts guard strategic locations. Mining colonies extract resources. Research stations study phenomena. Civilian settlements house populations." The commander walked to his observation window, which showed the human colony spinning slowly in space around a small asteroid. "Human colonies do all of these things at once. Every civilian is also a researcher. Every researcher is also a potential soldier. Every soldier is also a builder. They do not seem to distinguish between military and civilian purposes." He resumed his dictation. "This morning, the humans detected an asteroid on a collision course with their colony. Most species would evacuate or attempt to destroy the asteroid. The humans moved their entire colony to intercept the asteroid, then began mining it while adjusting their orbital path to avoid collision." Commander Thekval shook his massive head in bewilderment. They turned a natural disaster into a resource opportunity, without missing a day of their regular activities. When I requested an explanation, their colony administrator, a female named Park Yunju, said they were making the best of the situation. 3 months later, the asteroid collision had made the human colony 3 times larger and significantly more prosperous. Commander Thekval found himself writing a very different kind of report. The humans have completed their expansion, using materials from the intercepted asteroid. Their colony now supports 50,000 inhabitants and produces more refined metals than our largest mining operations. They have also established the first multi-species research station in this sector." He paused to check his facts, still hardly believing them. 17 different species now maintain permanent research teams at New Sol. The humans charge no fees for this service. When asked about their motivation, Administrator Park said they were curious about everyone's ideas. Back on Kepler 4042c, Doyen was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most ambitious colony yet. The orange world that other species had declared uninhabitable now hosted a thriving settlement of 15,000 humans. "The atmospheric processors are working better than expected," he reported to the daily colony briefing. "We're not trying to change the planet's atmosphere. We're creating microclimates that work with the existing conditions." Colony Administrator Junho nodded approvingly. "Status of the new arrivals?" "Excellent," replied Settlement Coordinator Nyan. "The Zephyr Refugees have adapted well to our gravity modification technology. They say they've never experienced anything like our approach to environmental control. Doyen smiled. The Zephyr refugees had lost their homeworld to a stellar flare 6 months ago. When they asked the Galactic Council for assistance, they were offered temporary shelter on various worlds. When they asked humans for help, they were offered permanent citizenship and a chance to help build something new. The Zephyr engineers are already contributing to our next project, Doyen continued. They want to help us design a colony ship that could support multiple species on long-duration flights. Junho looked surprised. They want to help us expand? They say they've never been part of a civilization that asks, what can we build together? Instead of, what can we take from each other? Nyan explained. 3 more Zephyr groups have requested permission to join our colonies. Across the galaxy, Elder Crixthon sat in his private chambers on Veltar Prime, updating the journal he had kept for 10 millennia. His 6 eyes focused on the star charts that showed human expansion over the past 3 years. 10 years had passed since Elder Crixthon's warning, and the word human now carried weight in every corner of the galaxy. What had started as curious interest had transformed into something much more serious. The established powers were beginning to understand that humanity was not just another species. They were a force of change. Ambassador Velkron of the Corvani hegemony stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, his golden scales dim with worry. The great hall that had once dismissed the Elder's warnings now buzzed with nervous energy. The situation is unacceptable, Velkron declared, his voice carrying the authority of a civilization that had dominated trade, routes for 3 millennia. Human expansion has reached 78 star systems. They ignore our territorial claims. They establish colonies wherever they choose. This cannot continue. High Counselor Velketh, leader of the Galactic Council, gestured for calm. Her species, the Axiom, had maintained galactic peace for thousands of years through careful diplomacy and respect for established boundaries. Ambassador Velkron, the humans have not violated any existing treaties. Their expansion is technically legal under galactic law. Legal? General Thekval of the Thekron Empire stood up, his massive frame casting shadows across the assembly floor. They have established colonies and systems we claimed centuries ago, systems where we posted clear territorial markers. Systems where you posted markers but built nothing, corrected Elder Crixthon from his observer seat. The ancient Veltari had been attending more council sessions lately, watching the drama unfold with the patience of someone who had seen it all before. Human law recognizes claims based on development, not declarations. The Zephyr Collective representative clicked her mandibles in what might have been amusement. The humans offered to share development rights in those systems. My understanding is that both the Corvani and Thekron rejected these offers. Ambassador Velkron's scales flushed with anger. We do not share our territory with inferior species. Inferior? The voice came from the back of the assembly. Everyone turned to see Administrator Park Yunju, representing the Human Stellar Republic. She had been attending council sessions for 2 years, though she rarely spoke. When she did, her words carried the quiet authority of someone who got things done. Ambassador Velkron, Yunju said calmly, the Zephyr engineers working in our colonies have developed gravity manipulation techniques that surpass your civilization's achievements by several generations. The former Corvani raiders who joined our settlements have created new mining methods that tripled our resource extraction rates. In what way are these beings inferior? The assembly fell silent. It was true that humans had a disturbing tendency to take beings that other species considered outcasts or failures and turn them into valuable contributors. Refugees, criminals, rebels, and dissidents all seemed to find new purpose in human space. High Counselor Velketh spoke carefully. Administrator, Park, the Council appreciates human innovation. However, there are concerns about the rapid pace of your expansion. Perhaps it would be wise to slow down, to allow for proper integration with existing galactic structures. Yunju smiled, and somehow that expression made several delegates uncomfortable. Counselor, we appreciate your concern. However, human expansion is driven by opportunity, not conquest. We establish colonies where we find resources, potential partners, or interesting problems to solve. We cannot simply stop exploring because it makes others nervous. You could if the Galactic Council issued a formal restriction, General Tekval said bluntly. Submit to Council oversight of your expansion, limit your settlements to pre-approved systems, and agree to respect existing territorial claims. The silence in the Great Hall was complete. Every species in the galaxy understood what was being proposed. The Galactic Council was demanding that humanity accept limits on their growth, something that had never been asked of any spacefaring civilization. Before Yunju stood slowly, her expression thoughtful. General Tekval, we appreciate the Council's position. However, we must respectfully decline your kind offer. The explosion of voices that followed could be heard throughout the station. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Translation: systems overloaded and security forces moved to strategic positions. In the center of it all, Administrator Park Yunju waited calmly for the noise to die down. High Counselor Velketh finally restored order. Administrator Park, do you understand what you are saying? No species has ever refused a direct mandate from the Galactic Council. Then we are honored to be the first, Yunju replied. The Council has the right to make requests of its members. Humanity reserves the right to evaluate those requests and respond as we see fit. Ambassador Velkran stepped forward, his scales now bright with rage. This is intolerable. If humans refuse to accept Council authority, then they leave us no choice. The Corvani hegemony formally declares economic sanctions against all human settlements. No Corvani ships will trade with human colonies, no Corvani resources will be sold to human buyers. General Tekval nodded approvingly. The Thakran Empire supports these sanctions and adds military restrictions. Human ships will not be permitted to transit through Thakran space. Human settlements in disputed systems will be considered hostile occupations. Other delegates began voicing support for the sanctions. Within an hour, humanity faced economic and military pressure from 8 major galactic powers. It was the kind of coordinated response that had brought previous upstart species to heel within months. Yunju listened to it all with the same calm expression. When the declarations were finished, she spoke again. We regret that this situation has developed, but we understand your positions. However, we should point out that sanctions typically work both ways. What do you mean? Asked High Counselor Velketh. We mean that if Corvani ships cannot trade with human colonies, then human ships cannot trade with Corvani stations, Yunju explained patiently. If Thekaran space is closed to humans, then human space is closed to Thekaran vessels. We assume this is acceptable to the species that voted for sanctions. A new silence fell over the assembly. Several delegates began urgent consultations with their aides. The reality of human expansion was suddenly becoming clear to many of them for the first time. Ambassador Velkran's voice was strained when he spoke. You cannot be serious. Human space now includes the Kepler mining complex, the Andoria research stations, and the Centauri manufacturing hub. Cutting off trade with those facilities would be economically devastating to any species that depended on their output, Yunju agreed. We estimate that Corvani trade routes would lose approximately 40% of their value. Thakran military shipyards would face severe shortages of refined metals. Several smaller species would lose their primary sources of advanced technology. The delegates stared at her in shock. In 10 years, humanity had become so integrated into galactic commerce that cutting them off would hurt their enemies more than it hurt them. Dr. Yuna, humanity's chief scientist, chose that moment to make an announcement that changed everything. I should also mention that we have some developments that might interest the Council. She activated a holographic display that showed technical specifications beyond anything the galaxy had seen before. Human research teams, working with our Zephyr, Veltari, and former Corvani partners, have achieved several breakthroughs in the past year. The display showed ships that were twice as fast as anything in space, defensive systems that could deflect planet-killing weapons, and manufacturing techniques that could build space stations in days instead of years. We developed these technologies through cooperative research with dozens of species, Dr. Yuna continued. Unlike previous galactic powers, we do not keep our discoveries secret. Any species that wishes to benefit from human innovation is welcome to join our research networks. General Thekval's voice was barely controlled when he spoke. You are threatening us. Not at all, Yunju replied. We are offering you a choice. You can work with us as partners, sharing knowledge and resources for mutual benefit. Or you can work against us, in which case you will compete with civilizations that have access to technologies you cannot match. Elder Crixthon stood slowly, his ancient voice cutting through the tension. The pattern is complete. Humans do not conquer through force. They conquer through improvement. They make themselves indispensable, then offer to share their advantages with anyone willing to work with them. He looked around the assembly with all 6 eyes. The galaxy now faces a choice: adapt to human methods or be left behind by species that do adapt. There is no third option. High Counselor Velketh understood the implications immediately. You are saying that humanity has already won? I am saying that humanity redefined what winning means, Crixthon replied. They do not seek to rule us. They seek to make us better versions of ourselves. And that approach is very difficult to resist once you experience it. The session ended in chaos, with delegates arguing among themselves and urgent messages being sent to home governments. But the damage was done. The galaxy had seen that humanity could not be controlled through traditional methods. 6 months later, the Corvani Economic Council voted to normalize trade relations with human colonies. 25 years had passed since Elder Crixthon's warning, and the galaxy bore little resemblance to what it had been. Human space now stretched across 400 star systems, but the numbers told only part of the story. More important was how humanity had changed the meaning of interstellar civilization itself. President Ji-hoon of the Human Stellar Republic stood in his office on New Earth, looking out at the orbital shipyards, where vessels from 60 different species worked, side by side. When he had been born, humans had barely reached their own moon. Now they were at the center of the largest voluntary alliance in galactic history. His secretary, a former Tekran engineer named Kavar Thok, entered with the daily reports. Mr. President, the Stability Coalition has requested another meeting. They are insistent. Ji-hoon sighed. The Stability Coalition represented the last holdouts against human expansion. 9 major powers that still believed the galaxy should be ruled through traditional methods of territorial control and military dominance. They had been growing, increasingly desperate as more species chose to join the human republic instead of maintaining old alliances. What do they want this time? The same thing they always want, Kavarthok replied. His species had abandoned the Thekran Empire 5 years ago when they realized that humans offered better opportunities for military engineers. They want you to stop expanding. They want you to return territorial claims to original owners. They want you to submit to Galactic Council oversight. And in exchange, they promise not to attack human colonies. Ji-hoon almost laughed. The coalition had been making that same threat for 5 years, but they never followed through. The problem was simple. Attacking human colonies meant attacking the dozens of species that had chosen to live there. Any military action against humanity would hurt their own former citizens who had become human allies. Schedule the meeting for next week, Ji-hoon decided. And make sure General Hiram attends. They need to understand our position clearly. General, Hiram was reviewing tactical reports in the Human Defense Command Center when the meeting invitation arrived. As humanity's chief military strategist, she had spent the past decade revolutionizing how space warfare was conceived and conducted. The old model was simple. Fleets met in space, fought until one side won, and the victor claimed territory. Human warfare was completely different. They fought to communicate, not to destroy. Every battle was designed to demonstrate human capabilities while offering the enemy multiple opportunities to surrender, join, or negotiate. The coalition forces are massing at the Rigel Nexus, reported her intelligence officer, Commander Taekwon. 18 fleets from 9 different species. It's the largest military formation assembled in over a century. Hiram studied the tactical display. The coalition had clearly decided that humanity's continued expansion was an existential threat to their way of life. They weren't wrong, she reflected. Human methods were making traditional galactic power structures obsolete. What's their probable target? The New Seoul Manufacturing Complex, Taekwon replied. It's our largest industrial facility and home to 3 million civilians from 47 different species. If they destroy it, they think they can prove that human protection isn't reliable. Hiram nodded thoughtfully. And if they attack civilians from 47 species, they will unite the entire galaxy against them. Do they understand this? Our analysis suggests they're desperate enough not to care. Meanwhile, in the Outer Rim territories, an event was unfolding that would change the balance of galactic power forever. The ancient warrior species known as the Telkari were facing extinction, and they had made a choice that shocked the entire galaxy. Krindar the Final stood on the bridge of the last Telkari battle cruiser, watching his homeworld burn in the view screen. The stellar flare that had destroyed their sun was a natural disaster, but the Telkari had nowhere to run. Their warrior culture had made them respected, but isolated. No species offered sanctuary to beings whose entire civilization was built around combat except one. Final leader, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel Compassion. They are requesting permission to begin rescue operations. Krindar's 4 arms tensed with surprise. The humans had no alliance with the Telkari. No trade agreements, no mutual defense pacts. They had no obligation to help, and every reason to stay away from a dying world full of desperate warriors. Put them through. The holographic display showed a human female in the blue uniform of the Stellar Republic. Final leader Krindar, this is Captain Su-young of the Human Rescue Fleet. We have 40 ships standing by to evacuate your people. Our scientists believe we can save approximately 2 million Telkari if we begin operations immediately. Krindar stared at her. Human, why do you offer this? What do you want in return? Captain Su-young seemed confused by the question. We want to help. Your people are in danger. We have ships and resources. The math is simple. Nothing is simple in the galaxy, Krindar replied. Every action has a price. What is yours? No price, Su-young said firmly. We are offering Telkari citizens full membership in the Human Stellar Republic. You would have the same rights and opportunities as any human. Your culture would be preserved and respected. Your warriors would be welcome in our defense forces. The final leader of the Telkari felt something he had never experienced before. Hope offered without conditions. And if we refuse? Then we wish you well, and hope you find another solution, Su-young replied. The offer stands either way. We help because it is the right thing to do, not because we expect rewards. 3 days later, the Telkari accepted humanity's offer. 2 million warriors and their families joined the Human Republic, bringing with them military traditions that stretch back 10,000 years. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity not only rescued their former enemies, but immediately began integrating Telkari combat techniques into human defense strategies. The event that would become known as the Telkari Rescue changed everything. Species throughout the galaxy realized that humans would risk their own safety to help complete strangers. The concept of unconditional assistance was so foreign to galactic civilization that many beings couldn't understand it at first. Elder Crixthon, now ancient even by Veltari standards, watched the rescue operations from his observatory on New Geneva Station. His journal entries had become required reading for diplomatic schools throughout human space. The pattern reaches its logical conclusion, he wrote. Humans do not rescue the Telkari to gain allies, though they do gain allies. They do not save 2 million beings to acquire their technology, though they do acquire technology. They act from principle. Suffering should be reduced when possible, and all beings deserve the chance to build better lives. He paused to consider the implications. The galaxy has never seen a civilization guided by such principles applied on an interstellar scale. Other species help their allies, their trade partners, their genetic relatives. Humans help everyone, including species they have never met and may never encounter again. The elder saved his entry and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights, the Stability Coalition was preparing for war against humanity. They believed that military force could stop human expansion. They didn't understand that humanity's true power wasn't military. It was moral. Back on New Earth, President Ji-hoon met with the coalition delegates in the same conference room where humanity had first declined Galactic Council oversight 15 years earlier. The delegates looked older, more desperate, their confidence shaken by decades of watching their citizens choose human citizenship over their original allegiances. President Ji-hoon, High Counselor Velketh began. The coalition offers humanity a final opportunity to reconsider your expansion policies, accept limits on your growth, return territory to original claimants, and submit to council oversight. In exchange, we guarantee the safety of existing human colonies. Ji-hoon looked around the table at faces representing civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. And if we decline, Ambassador Velkran of the Corvani leaned forward, then we will be forced to take military action to preserve galactic stability. General Hiram spoke for the first time during the meeting. Coalition forces are already massing at Rigel. 18 fleets, approximately 2,000 ships. Are you planning to attack the new Sol complex? The silence that followed was answer, enough. I see. Hiram continued calmly. You plan to attack a manufacturing facility that houses 3 million civilians from 47 different species, including many of your own former citizens. You believe this will demonstrate the weakness of human protection. Thekran General Morvak's voice was strained. Sacrifices are necessary to preserve order. Whose order? President Ji-hoon asked quietly. The Telkari are rebuilding their culture in human space after we saved them from extinction. The Zephyr Collective has expanded their territory for the first time in 1,000 years through partnership with human colonies. Former Corvani raiders have become productive citizens and respected engineers. He stood up, his expression serious but not angry. You speak of preserving order, but you mean preserving your dominance over species that have chosen different paths. 50 years had passed since Elder Crixthon's warning, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The question was no longer whether humanity would dominate the stars, but what form that dominance would take. Across 1,000 star systems, 200 different species had chosen to become part of something that had never existed before. A galactic civilization built on voluntary cooperation. Chancellor Minhee stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of New Geneva Prime, the capital world of what was now called the Galactic Human Republic. She was herself a testament to how much had changed. Born a Corvani, she had chosen human citizenship 30 years ago and risen through merit to lead the largest voluntary alliance in galactic history. Her blue-green scales caught the light as she reviewed the reports that would determine the future of the galaxy. The most important document was barely a page long, confirmation that the cosmic nexus had been discovered. Archive Keeper Junho, she called to the elderly human scholar who served as the Republic's chief historian. Are the expedition teams ready? Junho looked up from his data tablets, his eyes bright with excitement despite his age. For decades he had documented humanity's transformation of galactic civilization. Now he would witness what might be its ultimate test. All teams are prepared, Chancellor, he reported. The Unity will carry representatives from every species in the Republic. Captain Hyunwoo will command the mission. Chancellor Minhee nodded. Captain Hyunwoo had been one of the first humans to explore beyond Earth's solar system. It was fitting that he would lead them to humanity's greatest discovery. The cosmic nexus was a mystery that had puzzled the galaxy for millions of years. Ancient ruins on dozens of worlds spoke of a test left behind by the first civilization. The species that had supposedly ruled the galaxy before any current civilization existed. The test was said to determine whether any race was worthy of inheriting cosmic knowledge and power. Previous species had tried to activate the nexus over the centuries. The Thekran Empire had sent their greatest warriors. The Corvani had deployed their most advanced technology. The Veltari had used their oldest wisdom. All had failed, and many had paid terrible prices for their attempts. But humans approached the nexus differently. They didn't see it as a test to be conquered, but as a puzzle to be solved cooperatively. Elder Crixthon, now so ancient that he required mechanical assistance to move, had insisted on joining the expedition despite his age. As the last surviving member of his generation, he felt a responsibility to witness what he had predicted 50 years earlier. The humans will not fail because they will not try to succeed alone, he told Junho as they prepared to board the Unity. Every previous species approached the Nexus as a challenge to their individual greatness. Humans see it as an opportunity for collective achievement. The expedition fleet launched from New Geneva Prime with great ceremony, but also with an air of uncertainty. The cosmic nexus sat at the center of the galaxy in a region of space that warped physics in ways that no science could explain. Ships that entered the area reported time distortions, gravity anomalies, and strange visions. As the Unity and its escort ships approached the nexus, they were confronted by the last major surprise of the human expansion era. A massive fleet waited for them at the edge of the distortion field, the final resistance of the last coalition. Admiral Sekthar of the remaining Thekran forces opened communications with the human fleet. His voice carried the weight of desperation and ancient pride. Humans, you will go no further. The Nexus is not meant for species that pollute the galaxy with their cooperation madness. Captain Hyunwoo, now an elderly man but still sharp, responded, with the calm authority that had made him legendary. Admiral Sekthar, you have every right to be here. The Nexus belongs to all species. We invite you to join our expedition. Join you? Sekthar's laugh held no humor. You have destroyed everything our civilizations built over millennia. You have convinced our own people to abandon their heritage for your false promises of unity. Now you seek to claim the ultimate prize of the galaxy. We seek to understand it, Hyunwoo corrected. And understanding is always better when shared. The standoff might have lasted hours, but it was interrupted by something unprecedented. The Nexus itself began to respond to the presence of so many different species in one place. A pulse of energy spread outward from the ancient structure, washing over both fleets harmlessly, but carrying with it a sensation that every being present recognized: evaluation. The Nexus was testing them, but not in the way anyone expected. Archive Keeper Junho felt the pulse pass through his mind and suddenly understood what was happening. Captain, he called out urgently, the Nexus isn't testing individual species. It's testing our civilization as a whole. The realization spread through both fleets as the energy pulse continued. The cosmic nexus had been waiting not for a species to prove its worthiness, but for multiple species to prove they could work together worthily. Admiral Sekthar's voice came over the communication channel, confused and shaken. The test, it's evaluating all of us simultaneously. Then we should face it together, Chancellor Minhee said, joining the conversation from the flagship. Admiral, we formally invite the last coalition to participate in the Nexus investigation as equal partners. What followed was the most remarkable transformation in galactic history. Species that had been enemies for decades found themselves working together as the Nexus demanded proof that galactic civilization had evolved beyond its primitive origins. The test was not about technology or military power. It was about whether different species could solve problems cooperatively, share resources fairly, and treat former enemies as potential friends. For humanity and its allies, these were skills they had been practicing for 50 years. For the coalition holdouts, it was a completely new way of thinking. Elder Crixthon, despite his great age, insisted on being part of the landing team that would enter the Nexus structure itself. As they walked through corridors that had waited millions of years for visitors, he shared his final insights. The first civilization did not disappear, he told the diverse group of explorers around him. They evolved beyond the need for physical existence, but they left this test to ensure that no species would inherit the galaxy until they had learned to share it properly. The heart of the Nexus was a chamber filled with impossible geometries and floating crystals that hummed with ancient power. As the mixed group of humans, Korvani, Thekran, Veltari, Telkari, and dozens of other species entered, the crystals began to resonate. Archive Keeper Junho, recorded what happened next, though his words could barely capture the experience. The Nexus showed us what the galaxy could become, not a collection of competing empires, but a single civilization where every species contributed their unique strengths to common goals. The vision was overwhelming. Worlds transformed into gardens that supported multiple forms of life. Space, filled with ships carrying explorers, artists, scientists, and philosophers from hundreds of different species. Technologies that seemed like magic, but were actually the result of cooperative research spanning millennia. But the vision came with a choice. The Nexus offered this future to the galaxy, but only if every species present agreed to work toward it together. There could be no holdouts, no secret agendas, no plans for future dominance. Admiral Sekthar was the first to speak when the vision ended. His voice was barely a whisper. Is this what humans have been trying to build all along? Not just humans, Chancellor Minhee replied. Everyone who chose to work with us instead of against us. This is what we built together. The choice was made unanimously. Every species present, even the former coalition members, agreed to accept the Nexus's offer. The ancient structure responded by releasing knowledge and technology that would accelerate galactic development by thousands of years. But more importantly, it released a signal that spread throughout the galaxy, announcing that the test had been passed. Intelligent species on distant worlds, some not yet discovered by galactic civilization, received the message that the galaxy was ready for them to join. Elder Crixthon lived just long enough to see the first responses arrive. New species emerged from hidden worlds, eager to become part of a galactic civilization that welcomed diversity instead of fearing it. His final journal entry, dictated as he lay dying in the medical bay of the Unity, summarized the transformation he had witnessed. I warned them that nothing could stand against humanity. I was both right and wrong. Nothing could stand against humanity because humanity refused to let anything stand alone. They won by helping everyone else win. Archive keeper Junho closed the journal and looked out at the galaxy that humanity had transformed. In 50 years, humans had gone from unknown primitives to the catalysts of the greatest civilization in cosmic history. But they had done it not by conquering the stars, but by convincing the stars to conquer themselves. The galaxy that Elder Crixthon had known, divided, competitive, suspicious, was gone forever. In its place was something unprecedented. A cosmic civilization built on the radical idea that everyone could succeed if they worked together. Ships from 1,000 worlds now traveled freely through space that had once been divided by jealously guarded borders.